Well, I would just like to be clear that I am not calling for the ousting of Assad in Syria because, for one reason, we don't know who is going to take that place. That has to be a broader coalition led by the United States and other countries that force that conversation to happen. I do believe that Assad is a dictator. He is a very dangerous person. But again, this is what we're learning in the Middle East, is that when a dictator is removed, who is going to replace that dictator, like we're seeing in Iraq or Syria, or in Libya or in Egypt? We want to make sure that people have the ability to protect themselves. But unfortunately, in this situation, ISIS has expanded. I believe that, again, our president needs to lead that coalition.
Thank you. Mr. Young, should all techniques be on the table with alleged terrorists or suspected terrorists?
Of course, we need to fight every battle consistent with our own values. So I would say that we don't telegraph to the enemies exactly what tools we're going to use, but we must not allow the Russians to take the lead, bolster Assad, which in turn drives recruitment towards ISIS. Let me explain how that happens. As Assad brutalizes his own citizens, as he engages in a genocide, people seek refuge in this horrible terrorist movement, ISIS, which wishes to do Americans harm. So it shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the challenge if you want to keep Assad in power.
Thank you, Mr. Stutzman.
Well, there is a difference between my opponent and I on this issue. My opponent voted to send arms into Syria to Syrian rebels. Again, we don't know who the Syrian rebels are. We know that there's at least 3 groups that may be fighting against one another. And I think that it is wise for us to be cautious, but to also have to lead in this fight. Because if we send arms into Syria to Syrian rebels, we don't know who they are. And the last thing I want is for them to be shooting back towards our military, who are trying to help make the situation much better.
Mr. Young, did you want a rebuttal, or is that an accurate statement?
This sounds like a lead from behind foreign policy. This sounds like Barack Obama 2.0. You deserve a national security conservative to serve you in the United States Senate, and that has always meant advancing U.S. leadership. You see, I know from my experience at the Naval Academy and the U.S. Marine Corps that the U.S. can play a very stabilizing role. We have to be smart and selective about where we engage, but we can't sit back on our hands, or small fires become very large conflagrations that put our men and women in uniform in jeopardy and also put the American people in jeopardy, and I won't stand for that as your U.S. Senator.